Good day to you. This is Anagalactic on a Friday, July 18th, 2025 from Chico, California. Over here, you will see the Essential Koran, which is a book written by the man shown here at the bottom, Thomas Cleary. A well-respected book, well-received by the Islam community, considered by all around to be a superb translation of selected surah, which are short to medium-long chapters, going to about 100. And this book has an introduction that I think every scientist should read. Now, someone who's raised in the Islam culture would probably not need to read this book in the way that I'm indicating, but a Western scientist should read the introduction to this book. I'm very big on introductions and prefaces, and I've often thought that some books, that's all you really need to read is the preface or introduction or both, a prologue or something like that, because the author sums up what he's trying to say. So what we're going to do is go on with our third reading through the introduction, which is only a few pages long, but it is so superb. It's the dream of every scientific writer to be able to write concisely but completely. And with some subjects, it's quite difficult to do that. You have to develop really an intuition, you have to have a gift or develop an art. And we all strive for that because it's so desirable to not be writing 1,000-page books, which can be tedious. In some cases, you could make an argument that that's necessary. I've read 1,000-page books, and I'm sure you have too. But if you can condense information, it saves time, it's efficient, it's very often better. Einstein was a big proponent of this principle, which I also accept, but both Einstein and I knew there's two sides to everything. In a case like this, you're trying to make science simple. In this case, it's really the science of a book, which was written by Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, we're going to try to finish this introduction. It's only a few pages longer, so that we can complete this third presentation in a series on the Quran, and really on Islam. Why am I doing this from a science platform? Science embraces a lot of human life. Depending on how you define science, I define science in its broadest sense and in its original sense, but most importantly, what I have striven for, whether by guidance or intuition or I just got lucky or however, it's a subjective point of view how well I've been doing, but I'm 70 years old and I have been doing this for about 2 decades, although I was a Bible scholar for the 4 decades before that, or really 3. So I've really lived 2 lives, but I'm greatly attracted to the Quran because it's an incredibly great book. Some people have a religious, allergy, or they were traumatized in their youth. Anybody who's adverse enough to religion to declare that they're atheist is someone who is really in pain, and they can't remember it, or a rational man cannot be an atheist. That's contradictory from my point of view. Now, an industrial scientist, and they're shameless about this from my point of view, there's a rising movement, it's well known, it's been given a name, called New Atheism. And I've checked the backgrounds just out of curiosity of some of the men that I've followed in order to catch up with science. You do have to have some kind of guidance because science has really come a long way, has it not? And I've checked, and I guess you could say from my point of view, it's depressing because no scientist, even if they really believe that they're atheist, they're lying to themselves when they think that. But, you can't really judge a man for his inner thoughts. But you can definitely judge a man by what he says. I don't believe a man when he says that he's atheist. I just don't. I try not to be confrontational. So far, I've been successful. But I mean, in science, you really have to draw the line between truth and falsehood, which is an age-old paradox, really. Not really a paradox, it's just difficult to arrive at an ultimate difference between truth and falsehood because everything has context, including what a man might think to be ultimate truth. And the Koran definitely deals with that. So does the Bible. So does the I Ching. So do the Vedas. And I could go on. There are several forms of what might be called broadly prophecy. The prophet, as he is known, and peace be upon him, Muhammad is considered to be, he's often called the prophet. And from the perspective of Mohammedans, that is absolutely correct. Now, from someone who was not raised in the Islam culture, there should be no culture shock. I mean, as a Christian, of course, I was exposed to extreme bias and prejudice, which I was never comfortable with. Even hatred of the Catholics, which is not really a religion, it's more of a mafia. But you're impugning something that other people believe in, and that's dicey to go after something like that. I always thought that religion was something we were all to share. And whatever religion you are, you share it because you're happy, but you're not, it's not confrontational. It's like, oh, your religion is, not as good. Now, in the case of the Quran, we have a most unique book. And I say that from the point of view of a wisdom book scholar. I'll just call them wisdom books because it goes from China to India. I mean, you're talking about Tibet, Iran. You have holy writings all over the place, including the Old and New Testaments, which purport to tell the story of a certain man, is how it is interpreted according to my upbringing and finally according to my conscious assent. So I don't think religions are meant to conflict. Now in Mohammedanism, as it was called, the better term is of course Islam, but the Islam people don't mind. They will say Mohammedan as well. And so it's just a question of convention and getting along with people's conventions. If a man wants to pray 5 times a day, I don't see how any rational man could think that that's like, oh, he's superstitious, he's not a scientist. That's quite incorrect. So that's the reason why, even from my science platform, after producing, to date, over 1,000 video presentations on science, really cosmic science. I start out with astronomy and then I go to quantum mechanics for a very specific reason. It's because quantum mechanics is about light. It's light that causes the quantum paradox. Nobody can figure out light. But it also has an aspect that concerns the electron. And I know this is science, not the Quran, but I'm trying to show you that these dovetail together. Really, in the evolution of a scientist's mind, which is the only form of evolution there is the evolution of man's mind. That does change. There is a transmission sequence too. The other form of evolution is biological evolution, which has been disproved, but as I've been attempting to show you, you still have to solve the problem that Darwin tried to solve. So far, nobody has done so. But there is an answer in the ancient holy scriptures of the earth. Now, in the New World, they didn't really produce any literature, either in North or South America. Although we don't know how much was destroyed by the conquistadores, but there's really nothing left to speak of in terms of science. They did have pretty advanced astronomy. All cultures turn to astronomy right away. So do children. And then you would hope they would be nurtured along. That's the right way to look, honey. Keep looking up. Oh, get them a telescope. Encourage that. That depends on culture and society, which is quite fickle over the centuries and millennia. You never know where you're going to be born, so to speak. So the point is, religion is meant to promote harmony and concord. It's not, they're the infidels and we've got the truth. I never saw it that way. And so eventually I was in disfavor with any of the churches because I was after the truth, and no Christian church, I'll just say Protestant church, of which there are estimated to be close to 1,000 different sects. That's rather alarming, really. Well, I know the reason for it now, but as a young man, I just wanted to hang out with people who believed in the Bible, because I do consider that whole book a holy book. But there are footnotes to these things. That text was handed down through over 1,000 years, some parts of it, and who knows what happened to the text in the hands of the authorities. Oh, it's well known. I've gone into that in somewhat, perhaps too much detail in the prior video, so I don't want to go down a path that's tedious. Instead, let's have a little fun. I really believe that science should be fun. Now here's where I start teaching youth, and I haven't had too many opportunities to do this yet, but I believe that the moon is the beginning of true science for any human, for biological reasons. That is a circle. Okay, I'm going to say no more there because that's really part of the main theme of my science, is dealing with circular geometry. And here is the quantum aspect, which deals with light. And you'll see I have the quantum photon as one of the aspects of the quantum paradox system. I'm highlighting it there. But I also deal with the quantum electron, which is almost redundant, the quantum photon, which certainly is redundant in some way, but we don't have much of an idea of what the photon is. The proton we have a lot of information on, and so I have a lot to say about what I consider to be a quantum particle, since all protons are alike. Quantum time is virtually a contradiction because everybody knows it's continuous. Quantum gravity is what's being sought as a way of unifying electrodynamics with the other major force in the universe, which is gravity. They are related. I will show you that. Well, I have, and I will show you again. Down here, I'm just going to read this. It's in small print. Mathematics is mechanistic. I think that's a fair statement. Geometry is non-mechanistic. What is it if it's not mechanistic? It's relational. It's the science of relationships, specifically between objects, which are often called geometric objects. I'm sure you could name the three that are basic. There is the line, which forms the basis of science itself. It also is the basis of our number system, and therefore is the basis of science. Linear mathematics has a severe, more than a drawback. Linear mathematics no longer works. We found out how it breaks. That is, I have. Now, geometry is about relationships between lines. That's called trigonometry. But when I say that geometry is non-mechanistic, that leaves out trigonometry. I don't deal with a straight line except to show how it fits into spherical geometry. So that's my shtick, as they say. Now, Euclidean geometry is mechanistic. I don't expect you to expect me to elucidate that right now, but it is in my prior videos, and I will be talking about that because that's part of my great big deal that I've discovered a new geometry, which is spheric geometry. And when I say I've discovered it, it's not Euclidean, it's non-Euclidean. And the best way to envision that, so that you know what I'm saying, is that it's not based on single component numbers. It's very much like the complex number system, in that it's a two-component number system. But my system is actually the most ancient form of mathematics known to mankind, which is proportionality. We call those fractions. Every fraction is a 2-component number. I discovered that. Now back here to geometry. I'm an astronomer, and I got into geometry because of astronomy. And I was studying spherical rotations because you need to do that, I'll just say, in my line of work. I was making maps of clusters of galaxies, which is really three-dimensional in the mechanistic sense of linear measurement. So I was studying the sphere and how to do spherical rotation, specifically an Euler rotation, which is a single rotation in 3D that combines all three sub-rotations. You rotate this much this way, then this much this way, and then one more. That's got a name. It's actually called... These have names, but that's how I got into geometry. Now, the reason I got into quantum mechanics had nothing to do with geometry per se. It's the fact that I needed to understand light transmission, because that's how we get our information in astronomy. And to know how light is transmitted will give a key to understanding the universe, of course. And I'm at that level. I try to be at the cutting edge level. It takes time to catch up. So in learning quantum mechanics I consider it to be fun, but that's because I got a tremendous insight into quantum mechanics that the physics community and mathematics community simply does not have available to them until they read my paper. And so I did want to show you that I do have 2 papers out. These are at public sites. This is just a framework and shouldn't be taken too seriously. And that's at a place called GitHub. GitHub Pages. It's free. It's HTML. It's perfectly fine. This one is in another free service offered by Google called Google Sites. And this is a different document because I'm just getting the framework. At the GitHub site, I expect to have a LaTeX document embedded in HTML, because LaTeX is the de facto standard for scientific publications. That will be my official publication, but it will be mirrored here at Google Docs, which is a subservice of Google Sites. You see, there's a bar up here that shows that you can edit this. You can too. This is collaborative. The GitHub site will be static. You'll have full access to it, even to download what I have, which is the whole idea, really. You'll be able to download my paper before the autumnal equinox, which is in a couple of months. So I do have that scheduled. So I am serious about this and producing a paper, which is the beginning of true collaborative science in this age, in this epoch. You need to have a paper for very good reasons, which I've gone into, but I'm sure you already know that. So that's the part that I wanted you to know, that I do have a history as a scientist, going from astronomy to geometry to quantum mechanics, and of course to general relativity, which is currently our framework for the universe. It is known to be inadequate, but that's the whole reason for the unified field solution, which we believe exists, although some men such as Bohr, Niels Bohr, does not believe that there's a unified solution. Einstein firmly believed it, so do I. I have every reason to side with Einstein because I discovered what he was looking for. I know that you might not believe that. You can either see my previous videos, wait for the paper to come out, or I will be continuing to broadcast until I drop dead. But these days, because I consider myself, my view of myself is as the highest form of scientist, which everybody is invited to do. But if you're the real, true role model for all scientists, as I claim and expect to be taken to be, because I am, I know that's subjective and megalomaniac, But in science, it's cutthroat. If you're discarded, it's because you're either wrong or you weren't convincing enough to be taken seriously to find out what you really said. And it's really Darwinian evolution. It's just not biological. It's mental. And these days it goes all the way to the British version of the use of that, I guess you could say it's a term, mental. It's a characteristic is what it is, or a property of a mind. If it's mental, it's cuckoo. Now, it's not how we use the word in America. The British know what they're saying when they say mental. I find it useful to know that, okay? So those are the two places that I am published currently, but the document isn't complete. I have links, but I really don't want you to look at it yet until I'm done, which will be shortly. It's really not difficult. And what is it? It's a new geometry with a new number system. It's non-Euclidean. It's non-linear. That's exactly what we need. If you notice the way people dance around the quantum paradox, and also how really knowledgeable, really top flight physicists and mathematicians regard general relativity, they all know there's a hole in it. And it's more than one hole. In quantum mechanics, it's much more severe because it changes our view of what science is capable of. I discovered the reason for that and the solution. I know, but somebody had to do it. There's only one way to find out if I'm right or wrong. I don't ask for money. So there's no, what am I going to get out of this? I've stated I don't want my name attached to this. Because I won't be alive to, ka-ching, whatever that means. Either for personal glory, that's not out of the question. I don't foresee that for myself, so I'm not tempted. So you could say I'm a perfect candidate for being unbiased about my own work. Totally unlike the industry standard people who definitely want to be taken seriously in some way because they make money. Well, that makes them biased as well. Okay. What we're going to do today is continue reading from this beautiful book. Now, let me show you. Here's my copy that I got at a used bookstore. I'm very fortunate to have found this. At the price I got it. You can find this for free online. And I downloaded it. It's in EPUB format, so you need to get an open source viewer or pay for a viewer, how you do it. And then you can read it. But EPUB is not the most convenient, so I will not be showing that over here. I'm simply going to read from this. But we have just a couple of pages left, and then we're done with this magnificent introduction to the Quran and to Islam. This man is an internationally respected scholar. I've never heard of anybody like this guy. Someone who can translate from ancient Chinese and from ancient Arabic, which is what this is. The man is gifted. Well, he's also gifted with tremendous insight. And I'm a stickler for that. Okay, so we're going to begin our reading now. I certainly hope you enjoy this. And we'll see if it is appropriate for me to make a fourth video in this series. But every top-notch scientist, which I hope you strive to be, will want to know this because it's part of the human equation, on which I've given several video presentations. I am not just a scientist. I'm also someone who expounds ancient wisdom so that we're balanced, so that we know what we're really doing. Because there's no way to say what science is for unless you go up a level, above science. Because it has to be embedded in some purpose. Because science has no actual goal. It's very abstract. I want to make that more concrete for you because you only have a finite amount of time to get whatever you're going to get from wisdom. So I put wisdom higher than science. I actually believe that science is part of wisdom, but there's two parts to a human. You know that love even fun, just fun and love, these have nothing to do with rational logic. They're human, very human, and love is what the ancient religion is all about. Not our love, but the love of our designer, who designed us to share the love that he feels for us. I believe that we are duty-bound as rational men to return that love. And you don't do that by saying that you're an atheist. And I'll leave it at that. I hope you agree, because I don't deal in trivialities or ambiguities. When it comes to truth and falsehood, it's one or the other. Now, we all fall short, I know that. But in the basics, you cannot fall short in your religious duty to heaven. It's up to you. I say it's not. I say you must. And so does Muhammad. So does Yeshua. And so do all the prophets. You're not allowed to buck against this. It doesn't mean you have to bend over for a priest. I really believe that that's what Americans fear, is that if I say that I'm religious, I'm going to be cornered by these monsters. It's happened. Every church that I've ever heard of does exactly that. But that's not religion. That's a church. I will never go into a church again. Not even a mosque, although I actually would, but not for the doctrine. I'm never going to go be taught by anybody else. You have to be humble, but you don't have to knuckle under to humans, ever. You knuckle under to the law of heaven. All right, that's enough preaching. I was a preacher. I was an overseas missionary in Ukraine, and I lived there for a long time, sometimes illegally. I visited Ukraine 5 times, between the years 1998 and 2009. And I was well received in Kiev. I was well received in Yalta, the 2 places that I preached the wisdom of heaven. That's what I do. Now I preach the wisdom of heaven through science and rational logic because I can. And I did not seek this. I did seek from an early age to master the Bible, which I did. I'm a Bible scholar. And I discovered the meaning of the Tetragrammaton. I'll leave it at that. You don't have to credit any of this, but I'm living up to my own standard. For all scientists today, especially Western scientists, you have to come clean, honey. And if you say that you're an atheist, you're out. That is the way it is. This new atheism, this is not going to work. You can't do that. It's totally anti-scientific to start with, but it's way worse than that. You can't come out and start saying you're an atheist and then tell people about the universe. I won't say the bad words that I have said in the past, and I have erased some of the... I don't like Western scientists. The ones who say that they're atheists. No, you have to come clean, dearie. If you're an atheist, you're not a scientist, and you're not reputable. You should not be listened to at all, because you don't have the right foundation in the universe to open your fat mouth. I do have that right. I earned it. By the grace of heaven. Amen. That's enough. And now back to the Koran. I'll be reading from this and we'll close this out. And I believe we'll have a 4th video to round out your picture of Islam and the Quran. Those are inseparable. I consider this to be the highest form of wisdom, for reasons that I can defend logically. I expect to be heard. I'm not looking for anything for me. This is for you, but this is what was given to me by heaven to do my whole life. So I do get emotional. You should too. Engage your emotions. That's what Bruce Lee said. You want to fight, and you'd better. You engage your emotions, so you get in the punches you want. This is a fight to the death. Atheism will not win this fight. They think they already have. Not while I'm alive, they haven't. All right, let's start our reading. Thank you for your patience. I'm going through quite a transition right now, I think you can tell. But I mean well, and I deliver. All right. This is from Thomas Cleary's translation of the Koran, selected surah, and this is from the introduction, our third reading therefrom. It's only a few pages long. We only have a couple of pages to go. I consider this to be required reading for every Western scientist, or really anybody. It is generally accepted that the Quran cannot be translated in a complete and literal manner because of the intimate relationship between its linguistic form and its semantic content, and because of the incommensurability of Arabic and non-Arabic languages. They're constructed differently. Not by much, but it makes translation difficult. That's what is being said. A modern descendant of the Prophet explains the nature of the sacred language of the Quran in these terms. Quote, "Classical Arabic is that version of Arabic which was used by the Qurayshite tribe, heredity guardians of the Temple of Mecca, and to which Muhammad belonged. Long before Arabic became considered a holy tongue because it is the vehicle of the Quran, it was the speech of the sacerdotal class of Mecca, a sanctuary whose religious history legend starts with Adam and Eve. Arabic, most precise and primitive of the Semitic languages, shows signs of being originally a constructed language. It is built up upon mathematical principles, a phenomenon not paralleled by any other language. Sufic analysis of its basic concept groupings shows that specifically initiatory or religious as well as psychological ideas are collectively associated around a stem in seemingly logical and deliberate fashion, which could hardly be fortuitous. That is, it's not a coincidence. The I Ching is built up this way as well, in another context, which I'll get to, but not in this lecture. It is in one of my previous lectures. The I Ching is another holy book, extremely holy, very remarkably unknown to Western scientists, or extensively, as I extend science, including the religious sciences. Those are sciences. It's just not based on the same extremely rigorous, mostly you could say mathematical, just to keep a long story short, but it's binary logic regulated because of the scientific method of proof. That's quite restricted and restrictive. It works for experimental results in order to prove a theorem, to try to find the laws of the universe. Well, those laws are not all mathematical. David Bohm is the only quantum mechanist who recognized that. The rest of them are still befuddled. There is a mathematical problem that does need to be solved. I solved it. It's a geometric problem based in mathematics that your physicists and mathematicians do not understand. Nobody has ever developed spherical geometry. It's still trigonometry. It's still lines. Oh no, the universe is non-Euclidean. I hope that makes sense to you because it's been proved. We now are just trying to figure out what it means. I know what it means. So does the Quran, so does the I Ching, so do the Vedas, so do the Gitas. I could go on. The Protestants have something to say. It's just drowned out under man-made nonsense. Even the Catholics had something to say. Well, for that matter, so did the Jews. They had something to say. But each one is considered to be in a certain dispensation according to the Islamic way of viewing religions. The Islam people, their culture, their religion accepts all religions. It's just that the Quran is unique. It's above the others. It's an interpreter of the others in order to separate the dross from the gold. And it does so marvelously. You don't have to accept that, but you do have to respond to it rationally. That's what a scientist does. We don't dictate what the universe is saying. And anybody who says that they're an atheist has not thought very clearly ever. You can't. No rational man is an atheist. You may convince yourself, well, I would prefer that there's no deity. Well, then you're not a scientist, but you're still allowed to have your thoughts. Just don't say them out loud. Because you don't know what you're talking about. A scientist never goes out on a limb like that. We should never talk about God in strict science. These days, though, because we're getting down to the wire, I mean, in terms of running out of time, this is a special dispensation. It's the dispensation of the apocalyptic age, which we just entered this month. You can't cross over Iran's boundaries right now from the other side of the earth with B-1 stealth bombers and have a pseudo-nation rain down death missiles at the same time and then just say, well, we just don't want you to have enriched uranium. You have to be rational. You can't take sides if you're a scientist. You can't take sides if you're a religious person. But what you have to do is either one, you have to tell the truth. If there's conflict, it has to stop. The Islamic people did not start this fight. You'd better wake up, okay? I'm just telling you, you had better either listen to me or find another guide who speaks the way I do. Because your life is on the line. That's the message of Muhammad. That's the message of Yeshua. That's the message of the designer through every dispensation. You have to be perfectly moral, and you have to turn on your rational mind. Those are two separate steps. Not every man gets both. In the West, it's almost impossible for a man to achieve both goals of using your emotional side correctly, which is for love and fun, and your logical, rational side, which is to deduce and prove to yourself there is a designer who is here before you and is much superior to you in every way. If you can't see that, you're not thinking clearly. It's as simple as that. Let's finish our reading. End quote. Because this type of concentration, made possible by the nature of the classical Arabic language, cannot be reproduced in English, I have attempted, this is the translator talking, I have attempted to compensate somewhat by the addition of linguistic notes, amplifying the meanings of certain words by reference to their roots and related derivatives. That's a lot of work. I hope you respect the work that this man has done. He did the same thing in Chinese, so he's gifted of heaven. It's a form of polymath, but it's concentrating on the most important subject, the either type of person, religious or scientific. There should be no conflict. It's the highest purpose of a human, is to unite those, much more powerful than the unified field theory for gravity and electromagnetism, is the unification of your rational and emotional side. The emotional side is love-based. Love! You were shown love. How did you learn about love? Because you're so smart? Oh no. Oh no. You've got to bow the knee, darling. If you don't, you're out, and it's not because I said so. I'll tolerate you until you say you're a scientist, and then you say you're an atheist. You just contradicted yourself. I will take you down and choke you out. In front of the children, to make an example out of you, Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's a random name. Neil deGrasse Tyson is known for being a hypocritical bully. He wants you to stay in those fucking universities to become the same amount of a dumb klutz that he's become. I could name 100 other names, and there's about on the order of tens of thousands of these monsters. They're all avowed atheists because they think that because they're white and they own mathematics and they have the United States government, they can, first of all, condone anything Israel does without opening their traps. Those are not the men we need leading any country, or scientists who lead the children and youth. It's been going on for generations. It's too late to be playing patty cake with retarded scientists. They're dangerous. This is healing. All right. I was a preacher. Don't forget that. I know I sound like a Southern Baptist is the joke we used to use. Oh, they're all the same. Don't kid yourself. These notes should therefore be viewed as an intrinsic part of the translation itself. As with the I Ching in one of the most recent translations, which I'll come back to, oh yeah, you have to have a good guide to a different cultural framework. Otherwise, you won't know exactly what they're saying. If you're a scientist, you need to know what people are saying about what they consider to be the truth. Let me remind you, the highest form of science is not mathematics. It's not even geometry. The highest form of science is truth in every category. You have to be well-rounded to do that. That's where Western scientists show their shame and just lack of education. They're not balanced. They're highly imbalanced in a most dangerous and misleading way. And they consciously try to influence other people. I don't believe they realize they're evil. Well, that's another reason a man goes to hell if he's like that. The pregnancy of Arabic also makes it possible and even useful to render the same word in different ways when translating from Arabic into another language. That's quite common, actually. According to the eminent theologian Al-Ghazali, there is no repetition in the Quran because repetition means that no further benefit is conferred. I know that to be true as a principle of correct exegesis, sometimes called hermeneutics. You're trying to analyze the grammar and syntax and constructions and relationships between the words and phrases and sentences and pieces so it makes contextual sense. That's exactly how David Bohm approached the quantum paradox, and he solved it. But it has two solutions. He never got the mathematics solution. I got that because I got the geometric solution. All right, this aspect of language and the meaning in the Quran also dovetails with the intensive concentration of Arabic that enables a single word to yield a whole group of concepts. I hope that makes sense to you. I'm sure it does. Another distinguished contemporary Muslim scholar and thinker, descended from the Prophet, describes the language of the Quran in terms that seem most directly expressive and experientially oriented, yet also enhance the new reader's sense and appreciation of the unique and inimitable literary qualities of the Quran. Quote, "The text of the Quran reveals human language crushed by the power of the divine word. It is as if the human language were scattered into 1,000 fragments, like a wave scattered into drops against the rocks at sea. One feels through the shattering effect left upon the language of the Quran the power of the divine whence it originated." I could speak for quite a long time on the profundity of what's being said here. The Quran displays human language with all the weakness inherent in it, becoming suddenly the recipient of the divine word and displaying its frailty before a power which is infinitely greater than man can imagine, unquote. This shattered and scattered facade of language is one factor that makes the Quran difficult for many Westerners to approach until The reason for this effect is adequately understood. The same thing is true of the I Ching. These are just, I could go on. Then the dramatic shifts in person, mood, tense, and mode become exhilarating exercises in perspective and translation of consciousness into a new manner of perception. I offer that on the scientific side. I'll show you how to achieve supervision. This is more important. This is supervision of a much higher kind, because it makes us get along and love each other and want the best for each other. That's what religion is for. It's for harmony. That's not how Americans are taught, by the way. So I have a great deal of compassion. But when you're a scientist, the way to show compassion is to correct errors. Nobody likes that. You do once you're shown the truth, because it's much better than the errors. That's religion, that should be science. I do both. All right. For the reasons summarized above, the Quran is an extremely dense and extraordinarily intense reading. The present collection of readings from the Quran is simply designed to help non-Muslim Westerners approach this sacred book and savor something of its literally amazing power and grace through a selection of chapters and verses encapsulating some of the central ideas and essential beauties of the book. Such is the nature of the Quran that many of the variations in literal translations that are as linguistically accurate as can be under the circumstances are present in subtleties, particularly nuances of particles and modal relations. For this reason, most renditions of the Quran look much alike to non-Muslim Westerners at first glance. These subtle nuances, however, can be combined in many ways to develop into considerable differences. These differences are intensified furthermore in proportion to the measure and degree of concentration and contemplation brought to bear by the individual reader. This is to bring you into direct contact with your source. You can call it the universe, but don't ever forget, the universe is structured, and it could not structure itself. Not to the degree we see on Earth, certainly, but what we find out from astronomy, none of the universe could have assembled itself mechanistically. There is a mechanistic aspect that science prefers, at least Western science, prefers to pursue for excellent reasons, but it can get out of control. It has gotten out of control. This is corrective both to science and to religion. That's what I do, both sides. To get the best, to get the cream, you do have to have faith that that exists. Well, if you're a real scientist and you've looked at the night sky, you know absolutely certainly you should fall down on your knees, fall down on your face, cry your eyes out with joy, wonder, awe, and gratitude. These scientists today in the West do the opposite. They believe that they're at the top of the pyramid because they're self-sufficient, because the government gives them money. That's part of the problem. All right. Certain characteristics of English also come into play when translating a sacred text into this language. Most significantly, there is the fact that there is no such thing as a sacred English. That's both a power and a weakness, by the way. This is not meant derogatorily. It's meant to bring out the difference between two completely differently constructed language systems. English is quite late. The Quran language is not late at all. It's very early. Okay, so it has a much different, and if I won't say anymore because I'm not actually a scholar in the Quran, but I understand this language from having studied the Bible intensively for 30 years. I wrote 4 books about the Bible. They were burned in the campfire before they got published. I could be making that up. You don't have to credit that. I wouldn't do that, but you don't know that. There is not even a classical English, in the same sense that there is a classical Arabic or a classical Sanskrit. Finally, for the very reason that there is no sacred, standard, or classical English, there is also no universal or even common literary aesthetic in English. This is a matter of level and degree. You might not like that because you love Shakespeare, you just love... You're missing the point if that's how you're reacting. This is not a criticism. It's a point of difference. English is an extraordinarily powerful language that goes well beyond the Semitic languages. But they're geared differently. It's like the wave-particle duality. You have to have both because both are true. We're not used to thinking that way. Oh no, it's one or the other. Not when it's relational, it's not. And the whole universe is relational, all right. This goes quite deep quite quickly. Well, you would expect so with a book of this stature. One particular problem in rendering the Quran into English is presented by the numerous intensive forms. This is also true in Hebrew to some degree. Used to refer to the attributes of God. That's quite specific. I should have read the whole sentence, but it's still true. There are different forms of intensification in Arabic, with different ways of interpreting or describing even one form. Hebrew uses forms as well. Just as a point of comparison, so you have an example, when I was trying to decipher the Tetragrammaton, it's well known to all scholars that it comes from a root verb to be. But then what do? Because it's in a certain form. Well, I studied the Hebrew grammarians going all the way to Gesenius, and I actually went deeper than Gesenius to get the right tense form and really interpretation of the inflection. That's what's being said here. In interpreting the holiest name of all, Allah, there are several names for the deity which in terms of respect are equivalent. And I won't even attempt to tell you how many of those there are, but depending on your point of view, there are lots of names for God that are perfectly acceptable and respectable. According to the Islam people, the highest form is Allah. Then that's what it is. You don't argue with someone who knows that. But I came from a different background, and I was going through Hebrew, not Arabic, and through the Bible, not the Quran. Those are independent. There's no conflict. But in context, I was studying what, I'll just say, the revealed religion at that dispensation, according to God himself. God is the one who gave himself the name that he showed to the Israelis. He can express himself by any number of names anywhere in the world, anytime he wants, with perfect consistency. We think of a name like I have just one name. But with God, I mean, he's too immense, he's too infinite from our perspective to limit him at all. If he has 1,000 names, that wouldn't surprise me a bit. It's been said, actually Arthur C. Clarke wrote a short story, the first story that I read by Arthur C. Clarke when I was only 12 years old was called The 9 Billion Names of God. Now, Arthur C. Clarke was not necessarily a religious person, but he was a good scientist and writer. He didn't try to brainwash the youth that they're from monkeys and there's no God. He didn't do that at all, although he was a homosexual, and I didn't know that at the time. But so what? He never tried to sway anybody else like, oh, we deserve our rights. Arthur C. Clarke, nobody even knew he was a homosexual, except his secretary kind of spilled the beans later. He just seemed to prefer men. I'm like, well, that's his business. I mean, I don't know. By the way, that's not a crime. In context, the way it was revealed to Israel was in 2 forms about homosexuality, which is a big deal now. I don't think it ever should be a big deal, but if God says it's a big deal, then I'm listening. Well, he doesn't really talk about it much. And in fact, in the New Testament, it said it's kind of a shame to even talk about those things. I mean, some men do stuff that you don't think is right, but I mean, what do? Kill them? No. Although in one context, if it's public and I mean, there's a limit to everything. Everything has a limit. I have freedom of speech in America, but I cannot speak so as to incite a mob, or to tell people to disobey the government. No, not me, baby. That's where I draw the line there. With homosexuality, the final word, according to both the Old Covenant and New Covenant, to the Israelis, okay? Eventually just Judah, but it's still the Israelis, the ones that God chose for that dispensation. Then they were dissolved. Now we have Islam. God doesn't lose his children just because they screwed up. God turned to other sons of Abraham and said, yeah, I kept you in reserve. That's Islam. They're the real chosen nation now. Judah certainly is not chosen for anything, except it actually still has a role, but I don't want to go into that. All right, so that's a special problem in translating the Quran into modern English. But to complete my story of the deciphering of the Tetragrammaton, which took me 15 years, I thought I had it 5 times, but the first 4 times, it's not exactly it. And then I really dove into the ancient Hebrew. Well, not ancient, because we don't really have much, but the actual Hebrew scholars. I mean, I went basically to Jerusalem to learn the language and found out about these forms, which include causative in at least 4 overlapping ways. Peel, pual, there's a bunch of intensified forms. One group of which has to do with causation, like to cause to be. That's almost the answer. That's almost the meaning of his name. You can consult Exodus on this to see how he explained it to Moshe, whom Americans call Moses because Americans can't pronounce anything right. But it's Moshe, of course. Moshe. Moses. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I mean, if you're trying to be a scientist, you should be accurate if you know the difference. It's not Jesus. That's not his name. Not one of those sounds in Jesus is a legitimate Semitic sound. His name is Yeshua, which is beautiful. Jesus is harsh and nasty. It's a stupid transliteration of his name. His name is Yeshua. Diminutive Yesha. I don't recommend that, but I happen to know that you can call him Yesha if you feel on that close terms with him. How many Americans know that? Well, we don't need to go into that. So the ultimate meaning of the Tetragrammaton, which I discovered and nobody accepted because I tried, nobody wanted to hear that, because they already know. They don't need to hear from someone talking down to them. Imagine if everybody treated Muhammad that way. Imagine if everybody treated the prophets that way. Well, the Israelis did treat the prophets that way. They murdered them all, including Yeshua. They murdered them all. The Mohammedans did not. They did not murder Muhammad. Although I will say it's on record in their records, he certainly had to defend himself because he was talking down to people who already knew everything. They were already on top. They were closer to God than anybody else could possibly be. That's how the Catholics thought too. That's how all the Protestants think. Islam does not think that way. They know they're on top, but they don't push it. They simply defend themselves. The Chinese did the same thing. They knew they had it, and they just stopped exploring the world. They had a naval fleet way back when. One of the emperors said that. We don't need to go explore anything. Let them come to us. I don't know if that's persisted to this day, but I just read that in Daniel Boorstin's book, The Discoverers. I'll strongly recommend that book. It's really, really entertaining, but it's true history. All right, so the there is no third person pronoun perfectly well suited to making references or reference to the transcendent God beyond all human conceptions. The ultimate shortcoming of human language is natural, of course, and not peculiar to English. But there are particular reasons for attending to the problem of the third person pronoun. That would be he. Yeah, because you is second person, I is first person, you is second person, he, she, or it, for the singular, is the third person pronoun. Many people of Jewish and Christian background feel alienated from their native faiths by what they call the angry old man image of God. That comes from the Catholics. The angry old man. My father, my very own fleshly father, who was agnostic, he just never referred to God ever, but he was a perfect man. And of course, I'm his son, I would be biased, but I got to observe that man. I worked shoulder to shoulder with him for over a decade in the store where I worked for him as a young man. So it wasn't just growing up with him, I knew him as an adult. I also spent the last year of his life with him when he was 87. He was a Major League Baseball player, quite famous, and he almost got into the Hall of Fame. He was a Major League pitcher for 14 years, and one of the most gentle, wonderful, fun men I have ever known. I loved that man for all eternity. But he only mentioned God to me once. And whenever he talked to me at all, like giving me some fatherly advice, boy, did I listen. Because he didn't talk much. He just liked to have fun and play sports and be a good man. Boy, beloved of all, so was my mother. They never fought. One of them was a Democrat. The other one was a Republican. I checked with my sisters just a few years ago. None of us knew that they voted at all. Well, so I was blessed with good parents. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long in the land. I made it. I'm over 70, so that came true for me. I'm just trying to cheer you up. Okay, but here's what he said about God. He just looked me right in the eye, because he knew I was studying the Bible. I was becoming a Christian. I was ecstatic. I was feeling good, you know. And he just said, just to tell me something. I guess he felt like he had to tell me something. He looked me right in the eye, and I was listening. He said, "There's no old man in the sky." I really gave that some thought. I still do. I think he's right. Although there is a prophetic passage where it says the Ancient of Days. Well, is that his name? No. Well, what's his name? The one causing being. It's causative infinitive, an unused form for obvious reasons, because in the third person, that can only apply to deity. So that's my contribution to religion. For what you may think of it, I have no idea, but I'm not going to stop telling what I know, because it's the truth. That's how Islam people feel too. They're not out to bully you, they're not out to threaten you, but they're not going to back down from what they know about deity. Which is, if you're not in submission to deity, they will warn you. The prophet did, practically on every page of this book. There is a certain form of fear that needs, it's really respect and awe. But if you say that, oh no, see, my father didn't say there's no such thing as God. He didn't say that. What he said was, there's no old man in the sky. That's what's being referred to here. Let me read that again. Many people of Jewish and Christian background feel alienated from their native faith by what they call the angry old man image of God. Well, what does that have to do with peace, love, joy, faith, and hope? No, you're bad. He's coming to get you. Gee whiz, that's the boogeyman, or bogeyman is... I love to tell stories, I'm sorry. The angry old man. with which they have been taught to associate religion. Well, that's exactly what the Islam people try to dispel. Don't believe these false stories. It's not like that at all. He loves you, but he'll send you to hell if you don't respect him. If you don't respect your own designer and creator and sustainer, the one causing being for the whole universe, anything that's alive is because of him, how can you deny that? Well, you certainly cannot say out loud, I am an atheist. You're damning yourself to hell, but it's far worse than that. That must never come out of any rational man's mouth. If you're convinced that there's not only no angry old man in the sky, but there's no deity before all things, you're not human, honey. You're not human. All right. Don't forget, this is exactly what Yeshua and all the prophets have said since the beginning of time. It's never changed. The Quran is the only book that I've ever read that recognizes religious truth in all of its forms. Truth is good. That's the whole basis of science, not just religion. It's just there's two sides of us. The logical, rational side. Okay. I'm sure that you... Yes, I get emotional. Because we just entered the apocalypse. We're in the apocalyptic age. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse very rapidly. Now that Iran has been touched, that's the apple of God's eye. The Jews are not going to get their way. America is not going to get its way. And we're waiting to see what Russia and China have to say about the antics going on that not even the UN is willing to stop. That's because the UN is controlled. I think you know that by now. It certainly was proved, just within the past 2 years, right? Israel is committing genocide. South Africa brought the suit. They made it stick. They're committing genocide. The Americans said, whatever. And that was the end, because the Americans vetoed it. That's the power that was invested in the UN right at the start by Joseph Stalin. You have to hear my videos. No one else is ever going to tell you this. All right. Many people of Jewish and Christian background don't like the angry old man image, which they were taught to associate with religion. That's false teaching. That's paganism. That's exactly what the Mohammedans want to cure. It's not to kill them. It's to cure them. And you can easily get along with Islam by just, if you're not sure about anything about God, I don't know, keep your mouth shut. And you're fine. All right, I was a preacher, forgive me. Furthermore, I'm sorry, let me start again. Furthermore, what has been perceived as the masculine bias. Oh yeah, how come God isn't a woman? Huh? How come you discriminate against women? This is said against Islam all the time. But it's also said against Christians. Not sure how the Jews fared with this. I should know, I just don't. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not perfect. I'm sorry. I don't know everything. That's, by the way, the beginning of submission to heaven. If you're willing to admit you don't know everything, you're on the right path anyway. And this is well known to have alienated many Western women from monotheism because God is always masculine. Well, the feminists just decided that's not revealed religion. How the hell would they know? What they're rebelling against is false religion. And they missed the mark. Well, I don't blame them. They don't know why they're being discriminated against by men. But when the men are all saying that God is masculine, they smell a rat. To avoid short-circuiting the attention of significant segments of the modern audience at such a rudimentary stage, I have translated the third-person Arabic pronoun huwa as referring to God as God or God as truth. This is because the root word has nuances. Rather than referring to the English pronouns he or him. Okay, I hope that makes sense. It barely made sense to me, but I'm kind of practiced in this. You can read this book on your own, by the way. All right. In technical terms, this means that since the fundamental linguistic resource is the power of reference, one technique for handling difficulties in translation begins with considering language from this point of view. I think that's enough, don't you? It's been 70 minutes. I usually try to keep my videos to 40 minutes because it's much more congenial to a Western audience who really have a self-perception of not having time enough for anything, unless it's a video game or a sport. They can sustain 2 or 3 hours of that. Useless activity, except for recreation, that's not useless. But for wisdom, no tolerance whatsoever. Because of brainwashing, bad education, just really an awful, awful culture. The American culture is almost non-existent. We should have evolved by now as a nation. We didn't. We degenerated. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but the hour is at hand, my friend. We just entered the apocalypse. I'll be teaching you from the book of the Apocalypsis, on which I'm an accredited master. Not very many people have even read Revelation, which is translated the unveiling, Apocalypsis. I studied it for 3 decades I never quite got it, but within the past 10 years, I made enormous advances in understanding that book. It's remarkable when you look back and you think, was I just born blind and stupid? You could say that. In my case, probably so. I don't want to project that onto you. You may be much more intelligent. You may be wiser. The only way we're ever going to find out if we can get along together, we don't hate each other, you and I can come together. I'd love to have you put me down, put me in my place. I'll accept it. I want to learn from you. I don't want to go to the end of my days just not knowing what you know. But you're going to have to put up with me because I want the same ultimate truth that you do. I think that's what binds us together with our logical side. The other side is love. We're not supposed to hate. We're not supposed to bomb. Governments do that. Humans never do. Humans are not murderers. They're trained to be murderers, and that's why we have so many murderers. Don't blame them. Jesus did not blame the soldier who came to him. He said, be happy with your wages and don't extort money from those who you have to fight. He didn't say drop your arms and become a peacenik. True prophets deal with life the way it is. I hope you do too, because that's the way it is. But it sure helps to know what the ancients figured out, especially those who got their wisdom directly from heaven. You don't have to believe that, but I'm required to say now that I'm an Islam man, if you persist in not believing that at all, you're going to hell. Exactly what you don't want to hear. Darling, what you don't want is to go to hell. But I'm not trying to get anything out of you. The Catholics and Protestants and Jews are. Okay? That's the way it is. Thank you for tuning in. We'll have more later. Keep looking up. The moon should rise about midnight tonight, I think. I'll probably be up because lonely old mathematicians keep strange hours. All right. Thank you very much, all of you who have tuned in. It means so much to me. It's all I wanted to do ever, was to share the truth so you can be happier, so you can be wholesome. I don't ask for money. I'm not asking you to join a church. I left all the churches. That's in the Bible. If you're a Christian, come out from among them and touch not the unclean thing. You have to leave your Mormon church, your Jehovah's Witness church, your Protestant church, definitely the Catholic Church. Get out! Or you're not going to get anything. That's Islam. May Allah be praised to the eternities. Don't worry about it. He will be. Aman. Amin. Amen.